Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, Donkey Kong who? We're talking Nintendo blind spots. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellis, joined as always by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Uh-huh. You said pretty twice.
Yeah. Just to convey, like, how pretty good it's going.
Like that it is pretty good. Now, were you at all leaning into and had to steer away from the Larry Davidism of pretty? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. I definitely know what you're talking about from, like, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess, like, even inadvertently, it just happens.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that, like, just wormed its way into the culture, and, like, we all kind of do it now.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it seems like it's something that should be hack, when someone does it, it gets a response, right? Like, everyone kind of likes it.
Look, I mean, we're all just monkeys, right?
Sure.
And so we appreciate pattern.
Okay, yes, but we turned on Yeah Baby, and we turned on My Wife.
But they had a really good yeah, after a really good run.
I guess I feel like pretty. I feel like that's been going for a decade. I think that'll outlive all the other jokes. That'll outlive, like, whatever I feel like. God, like, it's gonna outlive all these other jokes that we're, like, done with.
That was a pretty good Napoleon Dynamite.
Thank you.
Speaking of Napoleon Dynamite, a movie I've never actually seen before.
Oh, okay.
One might call this a blind spot, a cultural blind spot of mine.
Mark, you are coming dangerously near our topic for the day.
Should we maybe just get into it?
We should. Blind spots, we all have them. These are things in the culture, movies, TV shows, whatever, that are big deals that we have not experienced, do not know, either because we have no interest or because the stars have simply not aligned to give us these experiences.
Now, longtime listeners of the show will, of course, know that we are Nintendo fans,
yes.
not experts.
That's
We do not claim to know everything about Nintendo.
right.
And I think we both have, or at least I guess speaking only for myself.
Please speak only for yourself.
There are significant chunks of the Nintendo canon that I just didn't experience or have not experienced. Whether that was because I was a child when some of this stuff was released and I didn't have my own money to burn on it,
or even really your own interests. Do you remember being a kid and it's just like, we're gonna do whatever is happening? Right? Like, you're not like, I don't really like this, let's do something else. No, you're a kid, you're gonna play the game that's right there. That's why you play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the original NES, not because it's a good game. I guess you do like the Ninja Turtles, so
that's why there's any nostalgia at all for Crash Bandicoot. Sorry, I'm still tied up on that.
Mark is still on Crash Bandicoot. I suppose a blind spot for all of us. But so we made lists of our biggest Nintendo, or sometimes Nintendo-related blind spots. Games or series or franchises, whatever, that we have been unable to get into.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
And part of what brought this up for us was that Fire Emblem Warriors is coming out
tomorrow.
And both of us are like, ooh, man, it is really hard to get into those Musou games.
Not for lack of trying.
I've owned, I think, 2 or 3 Musou games.
And including Hyrule Warriors.
Yeah, including Hyrule Warriors. And, you know, if I pick up Fire Emblem Warriors on tomorrow, that'll be my 3rd Fire Emblem game, right? But I'm still not, I don't know, I'm not excited to, like, go back to it. 4th Fire Emblem game. 5th if you count Heroes.
Yeah, and I feel like these Musou games?
Musou games?
Yeah, so
we don't even know how to say it.
But I feel like these games are, they're very repetitive
Mm-hmm.
to my mind, and I have played some of them. I've played a Dynasty Warriors game, on like in co-op on the PlayStation 2, and I had fun with what I played, but I had my fill after like 45 minutes.
Yeah, and that's kind of like your fill forever, right? But there's obviously some part of this that we're missing, right? Or some aspect of it that we are blind to, right? So that's sort of where this conversation came from. We both have lists. We have not conferred with each other about these lists. They could be identical. I doubt it. But Mark, why don't you start us off with something from your list that you are blind to?
Sure, so I'm going to kind of, I guess, ease into it.
Ease
You know, like
on into it.
a warm hot tub. A hot tub, even?
Yeah, or like Dorothy and her friends on down the road.
Yes.
Right.
They're easing on.
That's right. He's
Down
on
there.
down. Like a hot tub. You're right.
So I'm starting with the F-Zero series.
Yes. Also on my list.
Of course.
Yeah. So what is it about? So tell me about what experience you do have with the F-Zero series.
So I've played, like a little bit of the Super Nintendo game.
Mm-hmm.
I think at your house is the most that I have played of F-Zero.
When I bought a cart for Sarah for her birthday, yeah, or Christmas or something.
And but I know that
it was a thoughtful present, is what I'm saying.
We get it. You guys like each other. It is a series that like I have played a little bit of that first game, and I know that it is well regarded and it has become scarce. But like the games that are the pinnacle of that series, I have just never. I don't know that I've ever seen it. Like I've never played them. The first time I ever even knew who Captain Falcon was from Smash Brothers.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a common thing, and I think that's also part of why the franchise has like a sort of lasting staying power. Like there hasn't been. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I actually don't know. I think the GameCube version was the last.
I believe you're correct. Yes.
But obviously, Captain Falcon has been in numerous Smash Brothers games since then. There are F-Zero tracks in Mario Kart 8. But yeah, the actual games themselves kind of remain impenetrable to me. I think they look super cool, but they're like too fast for me to have any real understanding of like what I'm doing when I'm playing them.
Yeah, I think part of it is for me is that I've never really enjoyed racing games.
Mm-hmm.
I like Mario Kart because there's like a social and like party aspect to it.
Sure.
And it's well balanced in the sense that whether you're good or bad, you have a shot.
Yeah, you can participate.
Yeah.
If nothing else. Yeah, but like if you start to screw up there's no fail state in Mario Kart, right? Like even when you're in 12th place, like you're still racing, you're still like getting better. I blow up in F-Zero all the time, right? Yeah, that like I don't know, the game can be like punishingly difficult. And actually that's some of I think what you see a lot of on my blind spot list is games that were probably too tough or too punishing for me when I was younger, and like therefore never put like real time into them. I also like the way F-Zero looks, but I almost feel like the world is too like bleak, or I don't know. It gives like the distinct impression of like an overly urbanized society, and like especially in the NES version, it looks polluted. Right. It just doesn't seem like a world I want to spend that much time in, and it seems like the game mostly ignores the world, right? Where it's like, no, it's just racing. So it's almost like too big of a question mark for me to ignore, but also like unpleasant enough that it turns me away from it.
I think also some of it was I was a young kid when the Super Nintendo came out, and so I didn't have the money to buy it on at launch.
Yeah.
So by the time that my family got a Super Nintendo, there were honestly just much better games to get at that point.
Yeah.
Like because F-Zero was one of the few launch titles, and it was a cool showcase for the technical aspects of the Super Nintendo.
Gotta love that Mode 7, baby.
But by the we got it probably just a few years before the 64 was released, so maybe like 93, 94. And by that time, there was much more to choose from.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to be poor guides for each other on this one specifically, but like, do you have a sense of what people do like about the series? Like, I was hoping that if I would say I have a blind spot here, you'd be like, oh, that's too bad because blah, blah, blah. But this one, we're both like, I don't know F-Zero.
I think, and if a listener is
Absolutely,
more familiar with the
absolutely.
series, we would love to hear about it. But I guess my understanding is a little bit the sense of speed
Yeah.
is what people really enjoy about it, that like separates it from other racers.
Yeah. But it's also like it feels like it almost splits the difference between like actual car racer and kart racer, you know what I mean? That like but is also fast. That there's like some kind of arcadiness to it that doesn't feel so like simmy or I don't know.
It's definitely not like a Gran Turismo or a Forza
Where
where
like a Project Cars or whatever.
Yeah, where it's trying to reproduce precisely
Mhm.
the experience of driving these like fancy sports cars. There is like a Nintendo like fantasy sci-fi like intangible fun element to it.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can move off of F-Zero. So I've got a pretty no, we'll stay here. On the subject of games that were probably too hard for me when I first got to play them and therefore like put them down forever. Punch Out. Punch Out and the Punch Out series in its entirety.
This was originally on my list.
Well, and you took it off?
Yeah.
So you and I have talked about this before when we did our kind of recap of the NES Classic Edition and like kind of went through and like played some games that we hadn't really sunk time into. But I don't feel as though I ever had a proper guide through Punch Out. I have never memorized a boxer's pattern. For me, every time I start one of those fights, it's a new like figure it out kind of experience. And like in the abstract, I like that. And I like those sorts of elements in other games. I like figuring out a boss's like attack pattern and overcoming that. Loved just as a recent example, the digging robot in Metroid Samus Returns. The actual fight with him I thought was super fun and super cool to like eventually figure out that attack pattern. But like when that's all the game is seeing patterns, recognizing them, and reacting to them. I don't know. It's too I don't know, like numerical or like
Mechanical.
yeah, maybe yeah. That like the game is 100% mechanics. And also like I think of a boxing game as like a fighting game and therefore as like an action game. And it's not. It's like a quick response puzzle game almost. So yeah, I've always had a hard time getting into Punch Out, and Super Punch Out and Punch Out on Wii. These are all games that I have owned at one point or another, and I've never like gotten deeper than two boxers into any of them.
Did you own them as when you were a kid, or like did your friends have them, or like what was your exposure to Punch Out?
Sure. So I had a friend who had a copy of Punch Out, but if he played it, he didn't play it around me. And yeah, I guess I didn't have them as a kid. I had a copy of Punch Out on the NES Classic. Super Punch Out I bought on the new 3DS when it came there, and obviously I have it now on the Super NES Classic. And Wii Punch Out I picked up when it came to the Wii U Virtual Console. Because I was like, these games are held in such high regard. And by that point, Smash Brothers 4 had come out, and Little Mac was a playable character in there, and I liked Little Mac. And I think like the designs and stuff are cool. But like the actual gameplay has just always been kind of a barrier for me.
Yeah, it's a game series that I similarly have very little experience with,
Mm-hmm.
and I wonder how much of that is my disinterest in it, because I feel like, as you know, I don't even remember seeing this game when I was little. I don't remember ever being in an arcade where there was like a punch out machine.
Yeah.
None of my friends own it, as far
Oh
as I
yeah,
know.
I don't think I've ever seen a Punch Out arcade machine, even though that I know that is like a Nintendo arcade cabinet.
And yeah, it just makes me wonder if, like when you're kids, you have so much time to just sit there and learn patterns and
Yeah.
just like beat your head against the wall at a game
Yeah.
endlessly, because what else are you going to do?
Yeah, you can play Battletoads when you're a kid.
But I think just like you, I didn't really play either of these games until, or the NES and SNES iterations of them, until, like the NES Classic Edition, and
Mm-hmm.
then the SNES Classic Edition came out, and we were messing around with both of them a little bit. And I don't like fighting. I'm not great at fighting games in general. I don't really like fighting games in general because I don't like having to memorize patterns and like the controls and
Right,
all
and
that
that
kind
like
of
kind of
stuff.
like
And like,
stimulus response that like you see someone inching towards you and you're like, okay, my options are now these, and they're a little bit closer. My options are now different. Yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, it's just a series that never clicked for me, that never like really appealed to me. And I do wonder sometimes, if I had had this game when I was a kid, if I would have like learned to love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's possible. I think also for me, I like feeling that I'm more in control of the character. Little Mac, he can dodge to the left, he can dodge to the right, but like you push left and he goes all the way left. You push right, he goes all the way right. And for me, that's like so he can move in 3 different positions and that's it. Like Mario can move an infinite number of positions all around the screen, or Link or Samus or whoever. Um, just it feels very limiting and very much like you're not actually controlling the character in that regard. Um, which is a conclusion I'm only coming to like now in in the moment. That doesn't feel satisfying to me.
But I do agree with you that presentationally, I think the games are super fun and inviting.
Yeah, and the music's great
The
too.
music's great. Even the NES version like
Mhm.
looks really good.
Awesome, huge sprites. Yeah.
It more than F-Zero, this is one that I almost like wish I liked, or like wish I was more into and wanted to explore more, because I've heard great things about the Wii version.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it
Me
would
too.
be fun to like revisit these almost like forgotten classics for me,
Yeah.
but
Or not forgotten.
or not
classics,
forgotten. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Gone and not forgotten.
So, speaking of that, like sense of feeling a little like left out
Yeah.
or on the outside looking in, a huge, huge blind spot for me in from modern Nintendo is the Wii U and the Wii
Oh,
U's
okay.
library of games. Because for as huge of a Nintendo fan as I am and have always been a Nintendo kid, or a Nintendo kid at heart, I completely passed on the Wii U.
Mm-hmm.
I was never even, and part of that was like where I was in my life at the time,
Yeah.
that I wasn't playing a lot of video games, and the other part of it was, for the marquee titles that I wanted, that I was playing, or that my friends were playing, that I wanted to play with them, that was all happening on the PlayStation or Xbox,
Right.
outside of like Smash Brothers, or like Mario Kart when it would come up. And it was just never it never felt like a compelling reason to buy the system.
Mm-hmm.
But there are so many good games.
Yeah, there are a ton of good games on the platform. And like I can totally see where like at launch it didn't really have like, what are you gonna play another like new Mario Brothers game? It's we had so many of them at that point, and like Nintendo Land was like cute, but there wasn't really a lot to do there. Um, and it did take maybe like 2 years into the system's lifespan is when like Mario Kart came out, and like 3D Land had already like come out by that point, And I think that's when people started to be like, oh wait, there maybe are games on this thing, and like maybe it's fun to play Wii U. But I think that's a conclusion that we all had to come to later. And I think you can be forgiven for having checked out of it before then. Um, are there specific experiences you think you missed out on that you um like want more of?
Well, I mean, we've played a few of these games that we think are going to be orphaned on the Wii U.
And we'll do more.
But I think like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze,
Yeah.
the little bit I played of that game is
Oh, let's get back to that game.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And that's one that I would 100% buy a full price port of that for the Switch.
Yeah.
But like with things like Splatoon 2 and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I feel like I'm getting able to experience some of those best games from the Wii U, but at the same time, things like Super Mario Brothers, like Super Mario 3D World.
Yep.
Like I've played some of that with you, and it is super fun, but I never really got to like deep dive into what that game can offer.
Right. I mean, ditto Mario Maker, ditto Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker.
Some of the best like new Super Mario Brother games, those were the Wii U versions.
And also the HD remakes of both Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are, in my mind, the definitive versions of those games. And Twilight Princess isn't a perfect game, but like it is pretty good. And to have like a definitive version of it that looks as good as it's ever gonna look, is in widescreen, is flipped the like GameCube way, doesn't have motion controls, and has your inventory on like the tablet, like that's a lot, right?
And not to sorry, go ahead.
Pikmin, Bayonetta, like there's a lot on there.
Not to mention the virtual console, the Wii, like the games that are available on the Wii U virtual console, including Wii games like Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2, which I'm not able to play right now, and I would love to be able to play Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2. And these games that feel unlikely to show up on the Switch if it gets a virtual console, at least like immediately, like Metroid Fusion, Metroid Zero Mission, just like that I also cannot play on my 3DS because I have the original 3DS. And so, you don't get the Super Nintendo releases like Earthbound and things like that.
Right.
So it's like it's a weird place where I could, in theory, at this point, pick up a Wii U probably for pretty cheap with a pretty substantial library. I'm not quite there yet, but I do feel like there are experiences that I missed out on by not having a Wii U that I will never be able to really experience.
Yeah. Well, and I mean obviously there's like a workaround for Splatoon, but like Splatoon the original was obviously such like an online experience, and people like posting stuff from Miiverse on there, and we have that with Splatoon 2, but like Mario Maker did the same thing, incorporated Miiverse, as did Super Mario 3D Land, and like all of those like little ecosystems disappear when people abandon the platform.
And or when Nintendo itself turns off Miiverse in a few months.
Yeah. That's a good one, Mark. So I have got like a bigger category here that has 3 games in it, but one umbrella. And it is the Game Boy Advanced. So I had a GBA. I think I have a launch GBA. Maybe even got it the day it came out. It's that like kind of purple clear one. But I feel like there were a lot of games that came to this thing that I just I don't know what kinds of experiences I was looking for on that platform. I mostly played like Zelda and Metroid. But just to lead off, Advance Wars. I have never played an Advance Wars game, which feels insane to me because I really like turn-based tactical games. In recent years have been into the Fire Emblem series, and obviously I just finished Mario plus Rabbids, but like Advance Wars, nope, I've never played any of them. Do you have any experience with that series?
Not a ton, but yeah, it is another kind of like blind spot for me. I will say in general, the Game Boy Advance is an incredible system.
Mm-hmm.
Although usurped definitely by the DS, just the library on the DS was insane.
Yeah.
But for the time, you were able to replay so many Super Nintendo
Yeah.
games, but now you're able to do it on the go.
Right.
And it was, or even just like more faithful recreations of NES games.
Yeah.
That alone like made the system worthwhile for me. Plus, it was a golden age of those like 16-bit RPG games
Yeah.
that we love. I mean, the GBA just like hit a sweet spot for me because the Super Nintendo up to that point was my like favorite console ever.
Right.
And so
And
to
this
just
is
get
just like
more Super Nintendo,
right, it's one that you can take with you.
was pretty incredible.
Yeah. So do you mind if we just stay with the like other GBA games that I feel like I've got a blind spot for, because it falls under exactly what you're saying right now, is that like 16-bit like turn-based RPG, with the exception of the first like 45 minutes of the first Golden Sun game. I have not played the Golden Sun games, which, especially for that point in my life when probably my Final Fantasy fandom was at its biggest, like here is a Nintendo published basically Final Fantasy like that you could take on the go that I just wasn't playing, right? Which is nuts to me. But then just to add on to that, the Mario and Luigi series. I'm a big fan of the original Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo. And I love the Paper Mario series as well. And like here's another franchise of like funny Mario RPG that I just didn't play because it was on a system that I wasn't like totally plugged into.
It's so funny that even though that series is not on my list, it is also a blind spot for me. And I own my 3DS is the Year of Luigi 3DS that came with Mario and Luigi Dream Team.
Yeah.
And I played maybe 15 minutes of that game and was bored out of my mind. And I know that is probably, I think, like the least well regarded of the Mario and Luigi.
It's also the first
series.
15 minutes of most RPGs, right?
But yeah, both those series, the Golden Sun and the Mario and Luigi RPG series, also blind spots for me.
And it seems like especially glaring that like there was just a re-release of Mario and Luigi, the first one, Superstar Saga, on the 3DS with like another, like again, like sort of a tactical game, and I'm just like, nah.
Yeah, what is it about that? Because it really should, again, only speaking for myself, like it should be something that I like desperately crave.
Yeah.
Right? Like a turn-based RPG with clever writing, starring Mario and Luigi, with like sprite graphics, and yet there's just something about, I love the Paper Mario games, developed by the same company,
right?
But there's just something about that series, from even just the tiny bit I know about it, that has just never appealed to me.
Yeah, I mean the world is a little bit different, right? Like, the Mario and Luigi games have like these other characters in them that are like just slightly outside of like the normal Mario universe. And I feel like the Paper Mario games are very they're very faithful to like normal sort of Mario mythology, right? Like your playable characters are a Goomba and a Paratroopa and Bowser or whatever. And that those games like are being more inventive with the worlds that you're exploring, but maybe feel a little less like Mario in that regard. I don't know. I think there's also something to all those games have like active battles, right? Where like you have to do like a little mini game with each attack. And I think the Mario and Luigi games have like a little bit more like egregious or repetitive implementation of that. Um, and is maybe like less satisfying, or I don't know why I don't dislike it more in Super Mario RPG or in Paper Mario, but I dislike it less in those cases.
Kind of on the same RPG feel, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like a really big blind spot for me in, again, the more modern Nintendo era are these big, I guess, just like modern Nintendo RPGs.
Okay,
You know, like the ones that are developed. In my head, I'm thinking specifically of the ones that are developed by like Monolith Soft.
sure.
Like,
So we're talking like Xenoblade.
yeah,
Yeah,
like what was the one for the Wii U? Like Xenoblade Chronicles
X.
X or Cross or whatever.
Yeah,
But like the Bait and Kate, uh, how do you even say that? Bait and Kados games from
I don't even know what
the
this is.
GameCube era.
Yeah,
There was like I don't know. And even with this upcoming Xenoblade Chronicles 2
yeah.
for the Switch, I feel like like we both really like JRPGs.
Mm-hmm.
I like these big expansive experiences. The world looks cool to a point,
Right.
but
The
there's just
world is cool.
something.
The presentation feels very like anime-y to
Yeah,
me. I think
the
that's
character
holding me back.
design and like the voice acting in this newest game feel especially that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
Does this feel like a game to you, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I'm talking now, that you're going to pick it up, play for 45 minutes, and then like just quietly put away?
yeah, it does. It really does. And that's how all of these games kind of like seem to me.
Yeah.
Even the ones that are really well regarded.
Mm-hmm.
There's again, it's kind of like the Mario and Luigi RPG series where there's just like something about it that I can't put my finger on,
Yeah.
that it just doesn't click for me, that doesn't really work.
Yeah. I would love to get I would love to get the hard sell from someone on the Xenoblade series.
Especially Xenoblade Chronicles, the first one for the Wii, which
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to be a really great game.
Right. But it's also like, when did that happen?
And like, what about it?
yeah, like what about it? Because these games have a reputation for like being a 120-hour long experience, and it's like, what? Like, I put that much time into Breath of the Wild, but like I was in love with that game for like 3 months, you know? What's it gonna take for another like big open world to catch my heart in that same way? Um yeah, I'm right there with you of like I don't get it, and I'm not sure what I'm missing there either. Okay. Should we move on to another one? So sorry, pulling up my list again. Oh, okay. Super Smash Brothers Melee. I was not plugged in to video games, specifically not plugged into Nintendo and the GameCube by the time Melee came out. And I understand this is regarded by the fighting game community and by most people as like the purest form of Smash Brothers. But the first Smash Brothers game that I cared about was Brawl.
The Wii, that's the
The
Wii
Wii one.
iteration.
Yeah, that's the Wii iteration, which includes like some like random tripping from the characters. The characters are unbalanced in a way that kind of breaks it on a competitive level, and it's missing some fan favorite characters.
So the N64 version, you didn't really like put
I
much
don't
time
think
into.
I've played that game.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so and I played a ton of Brawl, the Wii version, because I was living in Chicago at the time, had two roommates, one of which was big into Smash, and so like we played Smash a lot, just like in the house. I had someone there who I could play with at any time, and I really liked Smash 4 on both 3DS and Wii U. It's another Wii U experience you missed. Yeah, so like for me, I know people hold Melee in like really high regard because it's I guess I can understand that like that's where the series became itself, right? Um, but like yeah, that's my very specific blind spot of that one iteration of the game that everyone thinks is like the true form of the game. That I'm like, nah. For me, it starts on Wii.
So, I'm not really very competitive when it comes to video games.
Yeah,
I'm definitely not like uh deep into the scene
yeah,
or really like understand the intricacies of Melee, but I think what resonated with people and what uh people still really enjoy about the game is that it like fully delivered on the promise of the N64 version
yes.
from like a competitive standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
where like even Sakurai, part of the reason why the Wii version introduced tripping and other like unbalanced elements is he felt like he strayed too far
Too
from,
technical.
yeah, like he made Melee too technical, and I think that's why it persists in the fighting community, in the
Right,
fighting game community,
because
is
it
because
is
it is
technical.
like
Yeah.
the most technical, and it doesn't have those moments of like tripping or like the smash balls or whatever they're
Oh yeah,
called,
yeah. The
that can
ultimate
like,
Smash Balls.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the ultimate smash balls and things like that that are more like the blue shell of Smash Brothers.
Sure.
Like it omits all that kind of stuff, and you can turn off the ultimate smash balls, but you can't turn off tripping.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, and uh so that's why I think, especially because if you're like my age and you were, I don't know, maybe like 12 when the N64 version came out, and then by the time Melee was coming out, you were beginning to go to college, and so you had so much time to revisit this kind of like perfected version
Yeah.
of what you enjoyed as a child. And then I don't know, and maybe this is part of me projecting, but you just kind of like grew out of it as like the Wii version came in and things like that. Where it's like that one will always
Yeah.
be some people's favorite because of when it was released.
For sure. And I mean, I think I missed it because of when it was released. It came out around the same time as Wind Waker, which is a game that I didn't get to play until like I came back to it after college. So like, it's definitely, college was a different time for video games for me, right? That's when, first of all, I had just way less time to do stuff or to play games. But then like, Xbox was also like coming around then, and like people were playing Halo, and like I wasn't super big into it, but like, if I was gonna spend, a couple hours on a Friday night playing a game, I was probably playing Halo with my friends because that's what everyone else was doing. So, um, yeah, it's totally a function of like time and where I was in my life that I just didn't play Melee, and again, I can respect that people see it as like the balanced, true form of the game, but like, does it have Sonic the Hedgehog? Does it have Solid Snake? The answer to both these questions is no.
I mean, I'll never forgive Melee personally for nerfing Pikachu as hard as it did. Pikachu was amazing in the N64 version.
Yeah.
And then like never again
Right.
was Pikachu that good.
It's also the only time that Pichu is in one of those games, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Why do I know that?
What is Pichu something totally? That's off topic. We can take that off mic. Is Pichu a totally different thing?
It's like a de-evolved version of a Pikachu, right?
Okay, yeah. Yes. But why was it so tiny?
I don't know. Side note, outside of Red and Blue and Sun and Moon, I haven't played any of the Pokemon games in the interim like 26 years.
Yeah, that's another great one that also not on my list.
Yeah, but not on my list either, but I just thought I would because, I do have that's two different Pokemon games separated by decades. But and I, was very into Red and Blue when they came out, and played a fair amount of Sun and Moon now. But yeah, when people speak highly of any, Black and White or Alpha Sapphire,
And
Omega Ruby, there we go. Or even Silver and Gold, which I know just got re-releases on the 3DS. I got nothing.
So we talked about not Smash Brothers. We talked about Punch Out a little bit.
Yeah.
And that started off as an arcade game, really all of the Nintendo arcade games are kind of a mystery to me. But
Yeah.
probably like the biggest, most like glaring blind spot for me is the Donkey Kong arcade games.
I knew we were going to talk about Donkey Kong.
Because when we were revisiting the NES Classic Edition for an episode we did a little while ago, we played some Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong 3.
We did not play Donkey Kong 3.
Did we not? Did we?
It's not on the NES Classic.
Oh. Maybe I just looked it up afterwards or something.
Right.
But
maybe I just described it real well.
You painted a picture.
I did.
Those are games that I just never really played.
Mm-hmm.
Like that just I never played them in arcades. I think my friend had like a computer version of Donkey Kong,
which is not great.
But it was just nothing that I ever really experienced. Kind of the foundation of Nintendo.
Yeah, there are some of like those very early Nintendo arcade ports, like Donkey Kong Jr., Pinball, and the original Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers, but Mario Brothers, all those like single screen experiences that either I had as a kid or like we had family friends who had them. Like I have memories of going over to like a dinner party at like parents' friend's house and just being like put in a room with a kid I barely know and then like being made to play Mario Brothers for like 4 hours or, however long it took my dad to sober up and drive us home. Yeah, Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. for me, there's a lot of that track laid in my head. But I could see missing that excuse me, entirely. Did you play Donkey Kong 94?
No, and that's I didn't even know it existed until a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Or I didn't realize what it was.
Sure. So Donkey Kong 94, just so we're all on the same page, is a Game Boy Color game that uses the first 4 levels of Donkey Kong, or uses the entirety of Donkey Kong for its first 4 levels, and then turns into a sort of puzzle platforming game from there on out, utilizing Mario's like acrobatic abilities to navigate these sort of puzzle levels.
And it's supposed to be really good.
It's a great game, yeah.
But no, never played it because the little bit that I had played of Donkey Kong, I never enjoyed all that much.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the promise of more Donkey Kong wasn't all that appealing to me. Donkey Kong Jr., I had never played before.
Oh, before we played on the NES?
Uh-huh. So when we were playing together, it was like, oh, 1, I understand what this game is now. And 2, I understand where, like, potentially some of the ideas for Donkey Kong Country originated.
Yeah, and those games the physics in them are sticky, right? Like, Donkey Kong Jr. has like a weird arc to his jump. They can't fall very far without dying. It just like my criticism of Punch-Out, where you don't really feel like you're in meaningful control of the character. I think that does sort of apply to Mario and Donkey Kong Jr. in those 2 games.
Now and then Donkey Kong Country 3,
just
Donkey Kong 3.
Mm-hmm. Starring Stanley the Exterminator.
Still remains a bit of a mystery to me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't think I've ever seen that one played or played it myself.
That game's bad. It is really not fun. The sprite work is nice and like the music is good, but like, yeah, it's I don't know that I've ever played more than like 1 or 2 levels in it before being like, oh yeah, I don't like this game. It is not good. Are there any other like arcade games that jump out to you like that, or just like the Donkey Kong games?
I feel like those are the biggest like omissions, but in my own like Nintendo experience. But I mean, even something like Balloon Flight.
Yeah, sure.
I don't even know that I played again until like the NES Classic Edition came out, or if I did, it was so little of it that I don't remember at all. Ice Climbers, the same sort of deal.
Mm-hmm. Clue Land.
The original Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
Because by the time that we had an NES, Super Mario Brothers 2 had already been released.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to a game called Mario Brothers, and me as a kid is just like, what is this?
Some sort of non-Super Mario.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think we've talked about this before too, but that like the NES Classic is sort of a story of two systems, right? Like one early NES and like what you can achieve in something like Mario Brothers or Donkey Kong Jr. versus Super Mario Brothers 3 or Zelda and Zelda 2 and Star Tropics, like these games that are just like worlds beyond the single screen experiences that we were getting early in the generation. Do you have any more, or was that is that your list?
I still have one more. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. I fired off three at once. So
Oh, okay, great.
yeah.
So my final one is Nintendo Power. The
Oh.
I read Nintendo Power when I was older, so this was towards like the end of Nintendo Power's life. But in the heyday of Nintendo Power, when you were getting like guides to Final Fantasy, when it was
that
the
Super Mario
way
Brothers 3 guide
to learn, when it was the way to learn about new Nintendo games and Nintendo strategies. I growing up we never had a subscription, and so that's like a part of the Nintendo experience that I just completely passed me by.
Oh man, I ate it up.
How could you not?
Yeah, because there was a new magazine every month that had like all the information you needed, and like everyone had a poster in it. I had a playhouse in my backyard that was just like wallpapered with Nintendo Power posters. I loved that magazine.
And it was a way to learn about, one of the only ways to learn about like new and upcoming Nintendo games.
Before the internet. Yeah, and it also had like comics in it too. That there was like episodic. There was a Mario World comic that was in there for a little while, and a Link to the Past comic that was in there. I also want to say there was a Metroid one, but that may be like a half remembered fantasy on my part. And then there was the single page Howard and Nestor comics, which I was a big fan of, and it's just Howard and his little brother Nestor who like gets Nintendo games and bugs his older brother about them. Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, that was very near and dear to me. Did you ever like encounter the magazine, even if like you didn't have a subscription or anything?
Yeah, like I don't even remember really ever seeing one when I was like that age.
Yeah.
Or like friends having it or anything like that. No, and if I did, it's not like enough of a memory for me to like feel like because I remember going to friends' house and them having games, and I was like, oh, I like wish I had this.
Yeah.
But I don't ever remember going to a friend's house and being like, oh, you have like Nintendo Power, what, like just going over to read it or something like that.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a cool experience. It's neat to just like have a little bit of supplemental like material on the thing that you love, right? And obviously we all have that all the time now in the form of the internet, that there's more information about any pastime or niche bit of fandom. But before that, you needed to have a subscription to a magazine, I guess. Yeah. I was just thinking about the Zelda Four Swords adventures, and that's something that I missed out on entirely. And like the idea of hooking up your GBA to a GameCube and like playing with multiple people together. It seems like they should put that on Switch, right?
Or a GBA to each other for the original iteration of Four Swords that came on Link to the Past on the Game Boy Advance.
Weird stuff.
I mean, there's so much that we didn't even list here. Like so many Pokemon games, so many RPGs, so many breakfast cereals and cartoons that just never. There's so much Nintendo stuff that part of me like wishes I was able to experience it all.
Right, but also there's another part of you that values your time. All right, Mark, let's move out of this. Those are our blind spots, but you've got blind spots that are nothing like our blind spots. Maybe you're like, why are these guys talking so much about Metroid, right?
Who is she?
Yeah.
Or he?
Who and why can't Metroid crawl? Also Donkey Kong who to return to the question that we opened the show with, right? So we would love to hear about your blind spots
or educating us on our blind spots.
That's right. I still need a hard sell on the Xenoblade Chronicles series.
I would love to understand more about F-Zero.
Would love to get that. Also, probably a well-deserved dressing down about having never put in the effort to get good at Punch-Out. Would love that. Also, if I want to play an Advance Wars game, tell me which one to play. You can email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com or tweet at us just at NinCart Society. And if you have any other anything else to say about our previous conversation topics, we're always happy to revisit those. Our Frankenstein Together Mario game, which was super fun. It's probably the best Mario game that is never going to be made. But if you have any additions or subtractions to that, we would love to hear it. You can also bring any of that to our Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. And if you like the episode, please share it on Facebook or Twitter. You know all that stuff. Mark and I write about comic books on retconpunch.com. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can go to 8bitbetty.com to find his music, or you can listen right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers telling you it's okay to have skipped Donkey Kong 3. Thanks for listening.
What's a Creative Podcast Network?